He's like, hey, what about this tree over here? You're gonna get this one chopped off? And I was like, I don't know, is that my tree? He's like, well, I'd say it's your tree. And I was like, well, do you have a survey? I don't have a survey. Well, I don't have a survey either. Well, what are we gonna do?
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is The Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. Welcome back to The Closing Table. I am your host, Kevin C. McIntosh, and joining us on this episode, eager to share some of her knowledge with us, we want to welcome Dora Rudick to The Closing Table. How are you, Dora?
I'm good. How are you, Kevin?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you so much for being here, taking time out of your very busy schedule to pull up a chair at The Closing Table. We appreciate that.
Of course. Likewise. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about real estate in your market specifically. I want to know what's going on there. I want you to break it down. But before we even move into that, we want to know about you as a person, Dora. So if you can, in 60 seconds or less, tell us who you are outside of real estate.
My name is Dora. Outside of real estate, I am a mom, most importantly. You might hear a slight accent. My first language is Portuguese. That makes me a transplant and an immigrant.
Okay.
I'm originally from the Azores, which are islands off of the coast of Portugal. Most people don't know where they are, but they're dead smack in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So other than that, I am a mom, most importantly, soccer mom. My youngest has autism, so autism awareness is very important to me as well. So I would say those are some personal things about me that most people don't know outside of my professional life.
Love that. Gives us a little bit of insight into who you are as a person outside of being a professional. So let's slide into your profession now. Real estate. If you can, I want you to just describe your real estate business sum it up for me and our audience. And I want you to hit on a few key points if you can, how long you've been licensed, what you would consider your specialty or niche, and or any notable achievements, please.
You got it. So gosh, I started in real estate back probably, I don't know how old you are, but likely you were a twinkle in your mommy and daddy's eye. I'm 44, so I started real estate 20 years ago now, so 2003.
Oh, I've been around, yeah.
My boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, he was beginning his real estate career. I was just finishing off college, so started and helping and assisting him with that aspect of his career. And decided, I was like, yeah, I'm just going to take a break and not really sure. I have a degree in art and wasn't sure if I wanted to go and be an art teacher or something of that sort. But real estate sucked me in. Here I am 20 years later. But yeah, we did the appraisal side of things for a really long time, for about 11 years in California. Had a number of appraisers under us and covered a number of counties in California, went through the 2008 market crash that everybody talks about, where it went from purchases and refinancing to a lot of asset valuation and foreclosures and everything else like that. Once we started building our lives together, and he's originally from Pittsburgh, that's what got me here. So we would come and visit a lot, and typically around this time, actually November, end of, fall time. My birthday is coming up, so I love this time of year.
Happy
I love
birthday,
the fall
by the way.
foliage. Thank you. So this, I would always just tease and say, oh, whenever we have babies, we're going to move to Pittsburgh. And he'd be like, you're crazy. You're from an island and your family moved you to California. There's no way. And I did struggle when I first got here. I would go out driving, showing houses, and I didn't have scarves or gloves, and I'd have to stop at CVS and get gloves. I'd be like, my hands are freezing. But, temperatures have warmed also, so I guess that helps.
Interesting.
As far as Pittsburgh and my niche, I feel like I help a lot of first-time homebuyers. And also a lot of second-time home buyers and second home buyers. I have decided to invest in Pittsburgh myself. We bought our second home instead of buying a place in Florida or a condo in the mountains or something like that, or a lake house.
Mm,
We decided to invest right here in our city and buy our second place in downtown in the Strip District, which, if you're from Pittsburgh, you know it is a vibrant place to be and to invest in, I think.
hmm.
So yeah, I love Pittsburgh. I think it's a great place. I think it's a great place for people who don't know about it to come here and to um, invest in this untapped market. There's still so much growth here.
Yeah.
That other markets are so tapped out. That's not the case here. And being in a like a Rust Belt city with so much growth and biomedics and robotics and everything
Mm-hmm.
else that's here,
Mm-hmm.
there's just so much opportunity that I think is still untapped. So,
Yeah, yeah, I would agree too. Very, very interesting. Thanks for that background. A lot of different things that you touched on that I'm interested in, but I don't want to, lag on it too much. But being from Portugal, living in California, moving to Pittsburgh. I mean, when I say you've had different types of environments, different type of cultures that you were like the West Coast to the East Coast alone, it seems like two different countries. But then you actually come from
absolutely.
another country. So it's completely like what you've experienced, I imagine like you use it to your advantage in so many different ways with the fact that you've talked to different people. You have an art background also. So I would imagine that you incorporate these different types of experiences into your profession. Also with the experience of appraisals, I would imagine you incorporate that in some type of way. So there's a few different things that you mentioned that I definitely want to touch on as we move along that I felt like was very,
Yeah.
very interesting. So good, good. So Pittsburgh, we already explained that we're there right now, right? That's the current market. Let's talk about it in a little bit more detail from your perspective. All right. I've had agents on here from Pittsburgh recently, but let's get your perspective. Describe your market two parts, two ways. Geographically, get into as much detail for people who may have never been there, notable attractions, things to do, what your city is known for. Then get into some of the economics. What are some of the statistical data when it comes to price points, days on market, the square footage, whatever you have for us, please.
Yeah. So geographically, I guess Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, if you know, you know, black and yellow, we bleed it here.
Okay.
I I'm from Portugal. I'm not going to offend anyone, but if you know, football,
Oh,
there's two
I know where
different
you. I know
kinds.
where you were going with this.
However, but it's a big, there's the Three Rivers. I feel like if you watch movies, if you're a movie buff, you've likely seen Pittsburgh. Um, in general, I was just at Coldwell Bankers Gen Blue, our big annual conference in Atlanta this past week. And there's obviously people from all over the place, and people are surprised how many bridges are in
Yeah.
Pittsburgh and the Three Rivers. So geographically, it's a very picturesque, beautiful. Like I said to my husband when I first moved here and he brought me here, I was like, I'm moving here.
Hmm.
This place is great. I
Hmm.
remember when I first told family members, back to stories. Um, One of my cousins, my mom was like, "Oh, she's like, you're moving to Pittsburgh." Like it's like this terrible place. Meanwhile, I'm like, whoever comes here ends up like being converted. I think it's almost like I tell agents all the time that are starting out, like, do open houses, be seen, go there, and if you go, people will meet you and like you. But if you're just behind not interacting, you're not going to convert. And it's the same thing. I feel like Pittsburgh, once you kind of step into Pittsburgh's house, you're going to be converted.
Nice, nice. Love that. Love. I've heard so many great things about Pittsburgh. I've never been there, but I feel like it's a piece. It has a lot of similarities to where I am in the Midwest, as far as weather-wise
It's
and a few other things with the hardworking citizens.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
interesting, interesting. No, no. So yeah, continue. If you have any economical
Yeah.
data for us, please.
So the average price point, I feel like I sell just slightly above, not much, but it's like in that high 200s, low 300s, depending. We're a very much a micro market. Okay. So we have 92 neighborhoods just within the city limits of Pittsburgh. That's 92 little neighborhoods that everyone could find home in. And that's not even counting the suburbs. And, some of the top school districts, not only within the state, but nationally. So you come to Pittsburgh, your kids are going to get a top, well, public education, like beyond
Nice.
belief. That was one of the reasons also why I think I wanted to move here. We were looking at charter schools and private schools in California, and that was a big deal for us. Um, but yeah, and as far as real estate, I would say that's the average. Again, just going back and emphasizing about the affordability and the untapped market that Pittsburgh has to offer.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. See, I've also heard that Pittsburgh is one of those markets that really didn't experience any crazy high appreciation or prices
It's a
dropping dramatically or anything like that. It's just been pretty steady, correct?
It's a slow and steady race. I think I always kind of like just tell people this, like, here's a graph, like, and here's Miami, Los
Mm-hmm.
Angeles, all of that. Pittsburgh's just like here. Like, we're
Interesting.
just a slow and steady conservative investment. Hence why we bought our second home here, in the Strip district. It's a slow and steady investment. I don't think, if anything, there's just going to be continued, great growth. Not, 20% or anything wild and crazy like that, but I'm okay with that. Again, high risk is always good, but if you have some good confidence behind it, you know what I mean? If you
Mm.
like some, but if you don't, you know,
No, I get it.
stay steady.
Yeah, no, I get it 100%. That's why I feel like I can compare Pittsburgh to Detroit in a few different ways. I feel like it's the same thing. Detroit, I don't think was it. It did get affected by the pandemic and certain circumstances around that, but nonetheless, I think it's still one of those markets that it's kind of like below the radar. Not too many people look at Detroit
Right.
for many different reasons, but nonetheless, it's very affordable. It has its own culture. Subjective with
Yep.
the weather, but nonetheless, it's a great place to live if you ask me. But I did hear about
Sure.
Pittsburgh school districts as well as their medical field being pretty
Yeah.
known also. So interesting. I want to talk
Robotics
about
companies too. I think are
robotics.
heck yeah. Like driverless car companies, they're all here. They call it kind of like the mini Silicon Valley. I have my own assumptions why all the like driverless car companies are here. If you've been to Pittsburgh and you can drive and get through all of the tunnels and bridges and the, cat and mouse game of the driving here, I think ultimately is probably why they have those companies here. Is to if
That's so
anyone could
funny.
drive here, they could drive anywhere.
That's so funny because I just had an agent on who talked about it and said, yeah, sometimes you'll pull up to a light and look to your right and see that is a car with no driver. I'm like, yo, that's kind of crazy. So, yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting. You brought it up too. Robotics being known in Pittsburgh. That's very, very interesting. Thanks for bringing
yeah.
that up. Mount Lebanon, which is a town within that area of Metro Pittsburgh. I'm
hmm
seeing that it made a transition from being just a farming town to a thriving suburb. I know that had to have been some type of crazy transformation over the years, but in your experience, how have these historical changes, influenced not only the current housing landscape, but both buyer and seller preferences in that community?
Sure. So Mount Lebanon, as well as Upper St. Clair, which still has a functioning farm in it, which is like 20 minutes away from downtown Pittsburgh, which is really cool.
Hmm.
I there's only like 5 cows, but nonetheless there are. It's more like a fundraising to sustain it to the old way of life, which is really cool. It's called Gilfillan Farm, and right in between Mount Lebanon and Upper St. Clair.
Okay.
But yeah, those top school districts, both of those neighborhoods, Yeah, but that whole area, all of the South Hills was all a huge farmland back in the day. This was a big steel city,
Yep.
steel town. And now it's probably one of the top three neighborhoods to want to live in Pittsburgh. Top school district. Um, so many cute, quaint little shops and restaurants. A lot of breweries that are in other parts of the city are now having like sister locations in Mount Lebanon as well. Even pizza shops. So it's a great little place. People walk, still go to their farmers market. Kids walk to the ice cream shop and walk to the candy shop after school with their allowance money. So it is. It's a fairly great safe where, again, I think whenever you have a community where you can have your kids walk, like I said, to the ice cream
Oh
shop, to
yeah, yeah.
Betsy's or Grandpa
Mm-hmm.
Joe's, you know what I mean? That's a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
I think in today, like in our world
For
today, you know
sure.
what I mean? So,
No, I would agree. It's something about me considering myself a someone who loves the city. I'll say, I still,
mhm,
as I get
same.
older, I still appreciate the small towns, the country towns. I have family that lives in the country in the smaller towns, and when I visit
Hmm.
them, when I was younger, I hated it. There's nothing to do here. But as I get
Right.
older and now I have a
You
family,
appreciate.
I appreciate it. I see the value in everybody knowing each other, neighbors knowing each other, people knowing my kids and looking out for my kids. I appreciate that. So I can see
Sure.
the value in that type of town, and even in the transition that it made. So
Yeah.
interesting story behind that.
Yeah.
In your oh, please elaborate,
I
please.
was just going to say, I think just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, I think that's the great thing about Pittsburgh, again, is the welcoming factor that people feel when they come here, and
Mm-hmm.
myself included, is that like it's not a big city, it's a city, big buildings, lots of headquarters, big corporations, but you still have a lot of that small town feel
Mm.
where even like at our condo in the Strip District where I'm at right now, right? It's I could walk to the local coffee shop right here and they know my name, right?
Yep.
And
Beautiful.
that type of thing is just when you're in kind of a big metropolitan city is really awesome that you kind of still have that tight, uh,
Yeah.
family-esque feel
Tight
to it,
knit
you know?
community. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
I agree. I agree. In your 20 years experience, Dora, have you experienced any type of situation where you had to mediate a conflict between neighbors while you were in the middle of doing a sale or a purchase for a property? Or what about even between buyer and seller? But I want to talk about a time where you definitely had to come in between two different parties to mediate a conflict, and also talk about what you did to kind of come to a fair resolution and a positive outcome.
Oh gosh. I feel like there's always conflicts all day, every day. I don't want to put
Yeah,
any of my clients on blast or
of
anybody.
course. No.
So, I don't want, but I am going to tell you a personal story that was a conflict that I had personally with my own neighbor. And in
Mm.
the end, there's going to be a lesson for all of your listeners and viewers to take from it as well. So it was 2016. I was buying our home here in Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
and we had just closed on it. And we have an in-ground pool. You understand? I lived in California. I kind of wanted to live in a one-story home with a pool. Like I had
Right.
different criterias. So we found it and, moved in. I had like a tree service guy who I recommend to a ton of my clients come over. I'm like, hey, Barry, come on over.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get these trees. The guy, the inspector said this tree over by the pool's got to go. Roots are coming in. This is bad. Let's get rid. My new neighbor comes over right next door and he's like, hey, what about this tree over here? You're going to get this one chopped off or you're going to get this one chopped? And I was like, I don't know. Is that my tree? And he's like, well, I'd say it's your tree. And I was like, well, do you have a survey?
Ooh.
I don't have a survey. Well, I don't have a survey either. Well, what are we going to do? So he's like, well, I think this is your tree. And I was like, all right, how about this? We're going to get my tree guy over here to walk on over and tell us how much it's going to cost. And then we're going to shake on paying half. And then he
Mm.
said, great. But when I find out this is your tree, you're going to owe me this half.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
I said, that's fair. Fair enough. So I go inside, talk to my husband. I'm like, just had this interaction. Barry's out there with the trees, telling us this. Neighbor came up to me. He's like saying that this is our tree, the pine trees, ours. I don't know. We didn't have a survey. I'm an agent. I should have gotten a survey. But this is the suburbs. It all seems very,
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten about good fences make good neighbors. But with that being said, I go inside. My husband, Mr. Appraiser Diplomat, he's like, you just pay up and you just pay Barry the money and you're not taking any money from the new neighbor. So the point of the story is get a survey.
Yeah.
They're not that much.
Yeah.
And you won't have to deal with that kind of interaction. In the end, me and Mr. Bud became great friends. He ended up following his lawnmower. He's like 80. He was wonderful
Okay.
in the end, but he was
That's good.
he ended up falling once and I ended up helping him and then he was thankful for the rest of his life. It was, yeah.
Okay.
But get a
Oh,
survey. Get a
yeah.
survey, people.
Mm-hmm.
Do your due diligence whenever you're purchasing homes.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
Yes.
that's it.
Survey adds clarity to those blurred lines. And I like what
Yes.
you said. Would you say? Would you say a fence makes a good neighbor or something like that?
Good
I
fences
like
make
that.
good neighbors.
I love that. I love that. Yep, that's a good point right there. So, but that could have went so many different ways. It seems like you still had a voice of reason in that situation. You
I mean,
didn't.
I always try. I always try
Yeah.
to be fair. I was trying to, you have to understand, I love to negotiate at all times. If I
Mm-hmm.
could, I mean, my kids have taught me to be the best negotiator. Uh, I think I could have ever been. I think anybody who wants to be a great negotiator, just hang out with some kids and you're gonna like be tested. And then your
Mm.
skills are they're good, they're persistent, they give zero F's whatsoever because all they care about is what they want and they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
get it.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
yeah.
All right, so you got a lot of experience under your belt. With that being said, I want you to reflect and think about what do you feel like, in your opinion, is the most challenging aspect of the real estate industry, and do you have any specific examples from your career that kind of exemplifies this?
Oh gosh. I would say there's so many challenging things throughout this business. It just depends on which era of the business you're in, right?
Mm,
I would say at the very beginning, uh, when I started selling, I was brand new to Pittsburgh. Not only that, but I was a brand new agent, so I knew zero people whatsoever. Um, I would say the challenge to that is, and I guess I just learned this. It was my biggest outtake from this past week being in Atlanta at this thing was interaction versus transaction. I think in the very beginning, I was always told like, oh, just do as many transactions as you can because you're just going to learn. You're going to learn from doing as many transactions. Where I think now, this time later, it's about interaction versus that transaction. That's what's
mm,
important. It's about making an impact on every single person's life, whether they're at a 50,000 price point or at a 1.5 million price point.
mhm,
Um, just providing that same level of interaction with that human being. I also think another thing that has helped me with any sort of challenge that has come my way is baptizing each one of my clients as a family member. So as soon
mm,
as I take them on, I'm like, who is this person to me? Is this my cousin? Kevin, are you now my cousin? Are you
mhm.
now my uncle?
Yeah.
Are you my brother? Who are you to me? And everybody just kind of gets baptized as a family member at that point, where I'm now interacting with them on a different level now versus just a random stranger who I'm helping and it's just a transaction, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I love the perspective of looking at me as your uncle. I feel like I can see the resemblance.
I kind of see like a cousin in you,
I can
but
see that. Not the uncle though, okay? That's hilarious. But no, I love that. And I love your verbiage, baptizing them as a family member. I love that verbiage first and foremost. But I feel like that's the approach that you should have as a professional, not even just a real estate agent, especially if you're going to be in the service industry. You should be looking at people on the other side of the table or whatever situation as someone who's a family. Treat them like you want to be treated. That's the golden rule,
right.
if you
Yep.
ask me. So
Yeah.
interesting. I want to get back to the point of you living in California and making that move, right? Early, you said you made a move from California to Pittsburgh. Now, as someone from California, how do you help your clients make the adjustment of going from one environment to a completely different environment?
Yeah, it's I mean, the way I see it is I feel like I'm a great person. Honestly, if somebody is transitioning from one place to another, I think I'm a great person for them to be in touch with. I feel like, listen, I've moved across the country to country, state line, across,
Hmm. Coast to
different
coast.
aspects,
Yep.
coast, yeah, just different aspects. So I feel like I always tell people too, the hardest decision whenever you are making that type of a decision is actually making it. Once you
Hmm.
do it, it's easy. I remember whenever we were deciding to move here, the hardest part was making that decision. And then once with anything in life, whether somebody wants to become a real estate agent, whether somebody wants to buy a house or finally sell their house or finally buy their first investment property, it's actually being like, you know what? Today's the day that I'm going to call a loan officer and find out what my buying power is, right? So I think once you do that, then it's execution, right? And then everything. And because I've done it, and I feel like overall I'm a pretty like balanced person as
Hmm.
far as when pressure hits. I'm like always like solution based. I'm like, if you come with me with the drama, I'm like, hold up, no. What's the solution? Let's
Mm.
figure it out. Where I feel like I could typically when people are buying and selling, it's a stressful time, especially whenever you add in moving across the country and not just to one neighborhood to the next or 5 streets over.
Absolutely.
You know what
Hmm.
I mean? So, and the fact that I think it gives people a sense of comfort, like I've done it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you could do it too. And you
No.
can start another aspect of the sector of a career should they be struggling with that also or something like that. I always feel like I can, or I encourage people to be like, look, I could do it. You could do it too.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's not that
Yes.
hard. It's just about
Yes.
like making the hardest part is making that decision. And I'll help you and guide you through the execution process.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. And to add on to that, I feel like whether you're making a transition from maybe country to country, well, I'll use this as an example. If you're moving from country to country, right?
Hmm.
More than likely, in most cases, you may need a translator for your new country to understand not only just the language, but everything that comes with the language. You know what different symbols mean, what just the regular dialect
Yeah.
means. So it can mean
And
the same
culture, the
thing,
way
even
people do business. I'm
correct.
helping right now. I speak Portuguese, so I
Mm-hmm.
tend to help a lot of Portuguese speaking clients who are moving to Pittsburgh, especially Brazilians, which I'm Portuguese from
Mm,
Portugal. I have a different dialect. It's like California, you say
right.
coffee. If you're from Boston, it's coffee, right?
Well, good
Um,
point. Good point.
so different, but just in general, people culturally do things differently as far as timeline goes. Like, for instance, when I'm in Portugal, if I'm back in the Azores, I could be waiting 10 minutes before the waiter comes. And it takes me a moment to be there to be like, okay, Dora, slow down. We're not in the US and the waiter isn't coming in 5 seconds. They could care less that,
Mm,
you know what I mean, to get there on time. So it's just different pace and understanding people's paces. And not everybody moves at the same paces that we do, and being respectful to that
Yeah.
is important also, I think.
Yes, absolutely. No, you hit the nail on the head with that. Different languages, different dialect, different time zones. So your schedule and the adjustments, everything can be different. So to have someone who can easily translate that for you and help you get accustomed to what you're, putting yourself into, very, very important. And I think that's where your job comes in and what you do. So I love that you do that. Have you experienced any moments in your career where you didn't feel safe during a transaction? And I know as agents, you go into homes, some of them vacant, some of them could be vacant. Well, you think they're vacant and they're occupied, and it could be so many different situations. So talk about a situation where you didn't feel safe, whether you were with a client or not, and how did you handle it and take preventative measurements going forward?
This actually is very funny. What's coming to mind right now is not, I mean, there's been houses that I've looked at a client and be like, we're walking right out. This feels weird. But just like a vibe check weird, you know what I mean? You just don't know what's happening here. Let's
Yep.
walk out. This isn't the one. A lot of that in the investors, like, they're walking right out.
Hmm.
But one situation, I actually put myself in this situation. So listen, I'm an adult. I make terrible decisions at times too, just like everybody else. I'm
I was
not
gonna say,
perfect.
yep. Hmm.
I make stupid ass decisions. So this is actually funny, and it actually involves Matthew, my client, a recent client from this year uh, who was buying. He was moving here from California. He was a tech engineer. So
Hmm.
he didn't have his car here yet. He was flying in. We were looking at a bunch of houses, okay? He's in my car. I literally am running on fumes. We're going through like non-residential area, like through the woods to get from like one neighborhood in the east to another one.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I just felt like such an idiot. Like, why didn't I get like gas before? You know what I mean? I was like, I'm gonna get me and this kid stuck in the middle of the freaking woods right now. So I put myself in that dangerous
Yeah,
situation.
I get it.
So be prepared. That was me just not being prepared, just having a crap load of things to do
Yeah.
and not being prepared. So I guess the moral of that story is we could be, if we are more prepared, we could probably get ourselves out of more situations.
No, get it. Absolutely, absolutely. Just planning ahead, looking ahead, type of situation. Just
Yeah,
make
because
sure
look, I put
T's are crossed,
myself,
I's are dotted.
yeah. Like I literally put myself in like a dangerous situation. Luckily, nothing did happen and I would have had AAA, but I don't even know if I would have gotten service out there. So,
Yeah. No one's exempt from making crazy decisions, so I completely get it. Don't feel bad. I
no,
want to
it's
get into
fine. I don't.
something. I want to get into something I saw you said on social media. Very interesting. You said, quote, "Don't ever let your parents give you their house," end quote. Now, I know why you said this, but I want you to explain what you should do to pass your assets to your children without them facing certain stipulations. Explain that. And then share a time where you explain this to a client and it helped them
Um,
also.
oh gosh. So I'm not a financial advisor. Just
Of
want to put that
course.
out there. If I share
Hmm.
anything, it's from tidbits that I get online from people doing wonderful things. I'm now at a point in my life that I grew up poor, so I live poor. I like nice things, but for the most part, I like to be smart with my money. I
Hmm.
didn't grow up with it, so I want to try to grow it
Yep.
as much as I can. So now I'm really looking into, now that I have kids, into making them value money just as much as I did. They didn't grow up within the same means that I did. They're growing up in, the suburbs of Pittsburgh in a very nice home. Luckily, they barely ask for anything because I think they kind of have my mindset, but I just want them to know that the more knowledge you have, as far as finance goes, stuff like that, the more opportunity you have,
Right.
right? So I think ultimately, it's important to, I have a 15-year-old. He's a sophomore. I'm now trying to ream him to just read business books and, books on education, finance, stuff that he's not going to get in school, right?
Correct. Correct.
And I think that's the stuff that I didn't learn, that I've had to learn on myself. And my parents came from another country. They didn't know how to educate me on that, so I had to do it on my own. So now my goal is to try to teach them to grow their own wealth to any little bit that they hopefully will have. And
Correct.
not be
Correct.
stupid with money. Don't
Oh
waste your money on a bunch of Air Force Ones. And I mean, I like them too. I have
we
on a
all
pair
do.
right now. But the point is, you don't need 50 pairs.
No, you don't. You don't need all the colors. You don't need all the colors. Chill out. But I love the way you break that down. Financial intelligence and awareness is very important, even in the purchasing a home aspect. But I love the fact that you pointed that out, because when parents give their home to their children, the children have to face capital gains tax.
That's
So
right.
then, and that could be a hefty tax depending on the situation. So there's ways to go around it, putting it in a trust and different types of ways, which I'm not a financial advisor also, but there's things
But
that you can
yes,
do.
there's ways that
things
you can
do.
educate yourself.
Correct.
One of the big things that I want to do now is starting to pay my kids. So like, what are you going to do for me? Like, can you take like photos of mom? So and then you could be on my payroll. So what could you
Smart.
do to like, I want Parker to start like droning. He's not interested, but I'm like, I'll pay you if you do, but you know what I mean?
It's a
I want
valuable
him.
skill.
Well, not only that, but just something, it's not about doing something that you like, right? But it's something that I'm hiring you out to do and you're going to learn something. Maybe you don't, it's not like a high interest, but now you got that skill.
Correct. Correct.
So, and right now, um, it's about learning. Like you're a kid, take it all in.
I agree. I agree. I got one bonus question for you, Dora. I just want to know where your head is with this. It's a little bit fun. What movie, book, quote, or philosophy can you share with us that helped change or shape your perspective personally and or professionally?
I would probably say, gosh, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Ruiz, yep. I've read that.
I would probably say everybody should read it. I feel like my husband and I, we talk about it all the time. Or we could, um, if I say something negative or if he says something negative, I'm like, black magic, bro, stop. Like you're just bringing me down right now. Like it just comes up a lot. It's helped me to um, interact with people and to see where they're coming from and not to take what they're saying to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
That's one
Mm-hmm.
of the four agreements. Don't take
Correct.
anything personally. Like,
Yep.
do not like. I catch myself taking things personally. I'm like, what are you doing? Stop right now. That has nothing
Yep.
to do with you. They're upset, but this is not you. Like, has nothing to do with you. Taking yourself out of that. So, highly
I
recommend
love that book.
anybody. Yeah, it's so good. There's so much, like, just
It's
wisdom
it
beyond
it
belief.
seems it almost seems like common sense,
It's
but
so,
as we
yeah.
know, common sense isn't common. But overall, like it's a great book. It talks about a bunch of key things, including not taking things personal, not making assumptions, things that
Yeah.
you will feel like we should already have embedded in this, but it's just a reassurance there.
It's
So
a
great,
reassurance. Yeah.
great book.
Good coffee
Yeah.
table book to just have out and open up a page anytime you, like, are bored sitting on the couch.
Absolutely. I would agree. I agree. Well, thank you so much, Dora, for taking time out of
Yeah.
your schedule to be with us. At this point, if you have any last words and or want to tell people how to reach out to you, please do so now.
All right. You could reach me at thedorarudickteam.com. You can find me on IG at Dora Rudick Realtor. And yeah, reach me. I'm sure you could reach me, call me, text me, email me. If you've got anybody moving to Pittsburgh or wanting to know more about this great city, reach out. I'm here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you again, Dora. And for our YouTube audience watching right now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, do us both a favor and hit the like button. Make sure you also subscribe to our channel. And if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, any other podcast platform, please do the same. Give us a like, 5-star rating, and subscribe for our latest content. Dora, I want to leave our audience with a question before we leave to get their brains going. So this is for you, audience. Did your parents give you their home? If so, what obstacles did you have to overcome in that process? Don't tell us now. Leave it in the comments below. Besides that, we'll talk to you next time. Great work